and Startree is in Bay Area, and it is focused for real-time analytics and anomaly detection. And all of you probably know, like, there's a lot of buzz going on AI and how AI will radically change the nature of product management. And I came across a great article written by Henry, and I was curious to learn further. And that's why I thought, why don't we group together and chat about it and see what Henry thinks and what he has to share with all of us. With that, I'll open up the floor. Henry, my first question to you is if you can introduce yourself and then share like what is there in your LinkedIn profile, what's not in their LinkedIn profile, and then we can dive into the topic.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Henry. I got into practice about 11 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. Had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but was traveling by myself and came up with a business idea. Went back to university in the UK, sort of started that, learned really just through doing, learned through practice, learned the hard way. That business fell 2 years later, in fact, and really the last 8 years, the driving sort of force in my life has been, at least in my work life, has been really trying to understand what makes products succeed and fail, what makes effective product leaders versus the rest. So over the last 2 to 3 years, I've been running a business as a solo founder. That business is Product MBA, where we fast track product managers to becoming confident, effective product leaders, by actually getting you to build a real product from scratch. More recently, however, I have been really deep diving into AI just to understand what are the implications for building products and also what are the implications for us as product managers. I've been deep in that space the last month or so, and I think it's we'll talk about it shortly, but I'm going to stop there because I know Maddie's got some questions on AI and product.
Thank you, Henry. I know I have taken your courses in the past, and it was super useful in terms of the amount of knowledge and expertise you have, and definitely will hear more today and about AI and see where it goes. So my first question to you is, how will AI change the way product managers do their jobs today?
Yeah, great question. And just before we jump in, I think a caveat. I'm not an expert on AI. I have pretty limited knowledge about how generative AI works. I have just been playing around with a lot of the tools and really actually applying it to real world product situations. So it's very much a sort of real world. This is what I've observed and learned from testing out these tools. So the short answer is there's really two areas where AI adds value, right? There's the obvious one, which is the automation, right? The automation of repetitive tasks and of some research, right? So, in that way we can think of it as an assistant. That means that, rather than basically it's having a very smart, very fast intern. I'm sure many of you have been using things like ChatGPT in a way that we would use it. We would use Google search, right? We have a question, we go and ask a question, and we get some sort of response back from it. Now, the second area where I see a huge amount of value is improvement of the quality of our product work itself. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to talk about ChatGPT as the most reliable, most effective tool currently for product managers. It's extremely powerful when we don't just ask it a single question. So, for example, a big mistake I know many product people are making at the moment is that they will, they'll say like, okay, I run a B2B product, give me 5 ideas to improve retention. What are you going to get? You're going to get a pretty generic answer back. And in fact, what we've been using, what we're going to be teaching in an upcoming bootcamp, in fact, is when you sequence questions together, you start to get really powerful, really unique, insightful answers. So, for example, there's and I will share this with the listeners. We put together decision trees where you can ask the right questions in the right sequence to provide ChatGPT with the right context, enough context about your business, and then also lead it towards giving you, let's say, a unique product strategy. So that could be for a new product you're developing. It could be auditing an existing product, and it may in some cases just be validation of what you're already doing, which is also really powerful. So, yes, it's about automation and saying, hey, I need to write a product requirements document, or I need to write some user stories. It's great for that, but also when it's used properly, it can really lift up the quality of your ideas.
Yeah, that's very helpful to share that. Can you share one example? Maybe for the listeners, it will be useful as you say, like decision metrics. How does if you can share one example and how ChatGPT could be beneficial in that situation?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, I currently with one of my ex co-founders, we are looking at developing a new business. So, I see this. I'm not one to jump on trends. Like, I remember when Clubhouse came along, everyone said, "Hey, Henry, you should go to Clubhouse because it's going to be the next big thing." But this is going to be a persistent trend, and I see the power of it. So, specific example, I am currently using it in two situations. So the first is to do market analysis. So for example, we are looking at a variety of ideas. I'll just get up specifically that we're looking at how you might be able to personalize and automate customer outreach for existing customers. The goal being to re-engage those customers or to resell to them. That could be with existing products or with new products. So rather than spending like a week looking at different products, testing them out, I can get a really good idea very quickly of a competitive market by asking ChatGPT the right prompts about, what are the current solutions being used? How much roughly are people paying? Give me 5 ideas for early adopter markets I could focus on. And a really good output, in fact, of one of the decision trees that I'll share with you all is, for example, coming out with a really strong blue ocean strategy canvas. So what does that mean? It means we've got a good idea of what are the key factors of value, the key things that currently competitors in this market are doing well. What are they doing well? What are they potentially doing badly? And therefore, we can get a sense of where there might be a gap in the market. So in that case, it's really about market analysis, understanding needs and opportunities, so doing our product discovery work, all the way through to actually helping me craft a concrete product strategy.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I think this clearly says that how AI is going to augment PM's life, and that sounds very interesting. One thing that you brought up, like asking the right questions and kind of forming that decision metrics, and I think that's the true strength of PMs. Like we're asking the right questions, thinking through critically, and leveraging that as a strength and using the strengths of ChatGPT and then augmenting your life. So that sounds very promising. Now, my follow up question to you, and I see Mohsen has raised a hand. I'll get back to you, Mohsen. Just give me a few seconds and I'll invite you to the stage. My next question was related to this. Since we talked about augmenting the life of PMs, what are some of the challenges at the same time you may see when AI comes into the picture and how it's going to impact PMs?
Yeah, some of the challenges. I think that the first one is, well, we can talk about some of the principles of using these tools effectively. I'm happy to talk about in a second. In terms of challenges, I think the first thing is just to remember that this, I think it's dangerous actually for a less experienced PM to use these tools. Why do I say that? Because, Manu, as you said, good product management is about asking the right questions. So, for example, to get a good output around, okay, what do we think is a good product strategy? You need to have the experience and the human brain to say, yeah, that is a good strategy, whatever ChatGPT might be telling me, or showing me the market of sales automation tools, like what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and you need to be able to say, yeah, I see a gap here, with speed or personalization or pricing, for example. So I think the first challenge is that there will be many people that sort of blindly follow the output from ChatGPT or guides like the one that I put together without really knowing what's going on there. And a good example of that actually is if you ask ChatGPT to say, okay, based on the research and our conversation of, look at the market, what are the three things that we could focus on in terms of differentiation? It's going to say, hey, basically the point it will make is like, you should be the best at everything. And any real world product manager knows that is unrealistic, right? We have to start by, focusing on one, maybe two things that we do really, really well. Later, sure, we can sort of broaden out, but it's about focus rather than trying to sort of tick every box and please every customer. So I think first challenge is just not to blindly follow what the output is. I think that the second one is also to realize that there is no playbook with this. We're going to teach in this bootcamp prompts. Again, this sort of decision tree, a way to sort of guide you in your product decision making and product planning, road mapping, these kind of things. But you need to be able to ask the right questions yourself based on the unique output you're going to get from those tools. I think that's where the key value is not to say, hey, ChatGPT, give me a product strategy for, this product. Here's a brief description of it, for example. It's about knowing nuance, asking the right questions, digging in, trying to understand why it might give you an answer, for example. And that's not a big challenge. It just takes a mindset of experimentation and practicing with these tools.
Thank you. I think that is very well said. I had few follow-up questions, but I will hold up, and I see Mohsen had raised a hand for a question. So go ahead, Mohsen, unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thanks. This is a great session, so thanks for setting this up. So my question is, let me just set the context. So we have AIML product managers today that they work on basically solving problems, using mostly non-generative AI, using AI, yes. And most of that we see that predictive analytics using past data. Now, as Gen AI gets to start, companies start to adopt generative AI technologies, we're going to see enterprises basically needing, technologists, and product managers. So my question is so setting aside the productivity, using ChatGPT and tools for product managers that they want to jump into Gen AI solutions for verticals or general, for enterprises. Is there anything different that we have to bring to the table, for example, for non-generative AI solutions versus generative AI?
Good point. From experimentation, ChatGPT has just blown this out of the water because this is not publicly available, but you'll see great examples on Twitter. And you can do this yourself actually by copy and pasting data. ChatGPT can basically do the work of a business analyst, if not a data scientist, in terms of you input data or upload some data, and it's going to give you some unique insights back from that. So the point is that we don't need to develop custom tools anymore in this space. I don't think, I may be completely wrong with this further down the line, but I see the landscape being there are going to be thousands of custom tools. So rather than at the moment, I'm sort of hacking things together by having a conversation with ChatGPT. In future, there's going to be products that are based on ChatGPT that will be standalone products that we'll pay for. So other implications that markets are really going to break down and be highly nuanced and niche focused. Example of that is the one proposition I'm looking at currently, which is, for example, as I said, accessing customer data that a company has and using that to craft custom re-engagement messages to their customers. So, what are we doing now? We're going to be using ChatGPT's API, for example, to do that analysis. So that's text-based, right, in that case. But it does have capabilities to parse massive amounts of data and give unique insights from that. I imagine there will be cases where it's like, no, you need to actually do some custom ML, but I think in most cases you're not going to need that. So, again, coming back to my caveat at the beginning, it really comes down to like, are you asking the right questions? Like, yeah, I think there'll probably still be a need for like a data scientist to integrate and be tracking things properly. Maybe not. I think even that might be automated. But in terms of the accessing of insights from the data, that's going to come down to asking the right questions, which again is you can already be training that, improving that with general product experience, and also just practicing with something like ChatGPT.
Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you, Henry. Mohsin, did it answer your question, or do you have any follow-up?
No, it definitely answered my questions that a lot of what product brings to the table, they'll still basically need to ask the right questions and then taking insights and figuring out where to go next. So yeah.
I think actually, Madhu, sorry, I skipped over the sort of the key thing, the key shift for us as product people, which is that, and it's linked to what I just said. We all of our lives, the work has been the thing that mattered. So ideas are there's a quote around sort of ideas are a dime a dozen, i.e., hey, everyone's got ideas. It's about execution, and you listen to podcasts by people like Reid Hoffman. There's the big famous founders, Silicon Valley. It's all about execution for them. Now that is going to shift because execution is going to become really, really easy. Where we can, for example, we can at some point in the next 2 years, I think we're going to be able to say, hey, ChatGPT, build copy, let's say LinkedIn, copy LinkedIn, build LinkedIn for me. And it's going to do that in minutes. So execution no longer matters. It's going to be about the input that we put in as product managers. And usually we probably work with a technical person, but if you have technical experience and you're going to be a one-man super team, one-woman super team, so the big shift is going to be the ideas suddenly become everything. The ability to come up with really nuanced ideas about, hey, yeah, let's do LinkedIn, but for this specific niche or in this really different, unique way. So that there's ideas and layered within that is a depth of understanding around product strategy. So for example, like with the guys that I'm working with at the moment, we are, without even starting, we're already thinking about defensibility, like trenches. How do we build a defense? Because we could launch something and it starts to get good traction, but someone can come along and just copy it extremely quickly. So, understanding of things like network effects, how you leverage and improve data over time. And I think Mohsin, actually coming back to your question, that like one of our three is a data scientist, because we think there's something that we're going to have to do in terms of machine learning or improving the product through the data that we're going to be gathering, so that there is going to be something there. But I don't think it's like the core capability of a PM. And obviously that will depend on the company you work in there as well.
Yep. And I just wanted to add one more thing. I think we're talking a lot about the ChatGPT, but beyond ChatGPT, like ChatGPT turns out to be expensive as well, right? To maintain those large language models. But where else, like the impact could be, and PMs can have a huge role to play here, especially if in the spectrum of like overall like chat experience we are diving in, then AI powered customer service chatbots that doesn't need a extensive like big language model to train for. Like you could just apply your business context over there, and context come a huge part of it, and like applying the business context plus taking the value of like some kind of like Q&A kind of experience and learning the intent of the human. I think these are some of the places like where PMs can have a big role to play, because defining these things are extremely hard, and chat GPTs are not as useful in this case in my opinion, although you could leverage and make it a great product, but it also comes with cost. So that is one other thing that I would just want to add to this conversation.
I think actually So I wanted to talk as well about, we talked about ChatGPT, which is not the only thing going on in AI. Autonomous agents. I wrote quite an in-depth article on this. I'll link through to it after. These are super exciting. As with all AI, the hype is not, sorry, it doesn't live up to the hype yet, but it's very exciting. So what is an autonomous agent? Whereas a generative AI is essentially where we're analyzing data, right? So you ask ChatGPT a question, it goes off and analyzes some sources like articles, for example, and then it's going to come out with a, use that as ingredients and spit it out as a recipe, right? A piece of text or an image in the case of Midjourney. Autonomous agents are essentially where you define an objective. So for example, say, plan a trip for me and my friends to go to Japan next year. Plan a book, sorry. Autonomous agents have an ability to set multiple goals, pursue those goals, adjust along the way, and where it finds barriers, find like ways around that, and then adjust the plan as it goes. So you have different what are called agents. So one might be doing research on like, hey, where might I go? The other might be booking a flight for me. The other one might be booking accommodation or presenting me with 3 options in each city that I'm going to visit, for example. That's really, really exciting. Now, it's still a little bit limited. Like, there are some cool things you can do. I've literally used it to plan a trip to Japan, which is pretty cool. Some people are using it to do like automated sales outreach, website building, still very much in its infancy. Now, but that is a huge opportunity for us as product people. I think we're going to see this sort of like 2-tiered system of superpowered PMs, which are the ones that are going to be actually building new products using these tools or completely reinventing. Let's say you're a PM at LinkedIn, like if you're the one that really drives how AI is leveraged, like baked into that product, then you're going to be, 100x PM. And then there's going to be the sort of the majority, which are going to be, using it day to day to automate certain things, to help you write user stories, etc. And then there's going to be the ones that are going to be literally out of a job, I think, in the next 2 years that are just not using any of these things, for example. So I think really important to yes, look at things like GPT, and at least have an idea of like how you can work with some of these APIs. But autonomous agent is a really exciting opportunity that's only launched in April, but you're starting to see some good use cases with that we'd call it technology. Yeah, technology.
Great.
I have an, sorry, but I have a quick question. So I previously worked for a rating agency, so I have some domain experience. And let's say if I have an idea for using generative technology, how can I basically find out that this is actually because so many companies have sprouted since this, so how can I find out that, hey, somebody's actually building something that I have an idea about? Because, and then is that something?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's true of AI or not, really. I think when it comes to product is, look, it's important to understand the competitive landscape. So to know like what are other people doing so that, we make sure we're not doing the same as someone else. But really a good product strategy comes from going from first principles and saying like, what is wrong? Like, why is there this frustration there? Like, why is it that this person has a problem, or that this, this dominant solution is not serving its purpose for this specific customer? So I would say don't get too distracted by what others are doing. Just as we do with any product strategy, find, okay, like who do you want to help? What's the problem they want? What is that desired ideal outcome they're looking for? And then how do you think you could best deliver that? Now, there might be people doing the same thing. Obviously, try to differentiate. But hey, if they don't have traction, that could mean, their solution's not great. They've picked the wrong audience. They aren't focused enough in terms of the value they're delivering. So I wouldn't worry too much about the opposition, the competition. Just be really clear on like what are you trying to do, and can you get some early signal from the market that is actually something they value. So for example, very concrete example, I had a chat this morning with my team. We have defined a problem, early adopter market. We then looked at, and again, I'm happy to share this ideation worksheet. Okay, do we think it's an acute problem? Is the market addressable? Are we motivated to actually go and solve that problem? Do we see potential in the market? And then we looked at, what are the sort of costs, some of the risks, potential solutions we might develop. But we're not worried so much about what does this look like as a business until we know we've got a person with a problem, we understand how we might help them, and we've got we've got them to sign up to a landing page, for example, to then go, yeah, great, let's move to level 2, build a solution and test it out with them.
With interest of time, I think I would like to move on. One key theme that I was listening to your chat and then what you were talking about, I think it is very clear that applied AI is one area where PMs can add a lot of value, because you can bring in all the PM expertise, apply these interesting tools and spend, and that's one interesting key takeaway from this discussion. With that, I see Kelly had raised his hand, so I will let him ask one question, then we will move on. Go ahead,
Maddie, thank you so much. Yes, I just unmuted myself. Henry, I really appreciate this conversation, and thank you for talking about autonomous AI agents, because my question is actually towards that route. So out of curiosity, I wonder, if we humans, right, if we are good at maybe along the way detecting errors and rectifying those errors, what happens when we use autonomous agents, right, or generative AI to create a lot of processes, and we've gone far along the way, and we notice that perhaps there is a biased data, right, or the algorithm is messed up due to an error?
Yeah,
how do we rectify
doing
that?
the job wrong. Yeah, good question. I mean, yeah, it's like, say, for example, you said, you give it a description of a feature and it goes off and works out what to do. You can even say, hey, build this product for me, build it and market it for me. You can see, I can see a world where it's going to be able to do that for relatively simple products, let's say, a simple, e-commerce platform. Yeah, I mean, this comes back to my point where, we want to think of it as an assistant rather than autonomous is the wrong word, right? Autonomy in this specific case means it's doing limited stuff by itself, but, it's not there inventing, coming up with the solution for world hunger, for example, right? It's limited autonomy. The key to that is just keep an eye on what's happening, right? So one thing I really like with autonomous agent, and why it's really fun to experiment, is it will talk through its thought process, update the plan, then go and put it into action. So you can see where it might be going. And, in those kind of situations, it's going to be really a simple case of of oversight from you as the product person. And coming back to my first point, I don't see a future where we're going to replace human experience and creativity as product managers. And I think that's why it's really exciting. I'm excited about product management in the future because of AI, because I just see it as, getting rid of all the boring stuff, the project management side, even updating stakeholders, and allowing us to, stay on top of the high level things. So part of that high level is going to be, hey, sure, we've got autonomous agents maybe going and doing the building, but we are still keeping an eye on what's going on and adjusting and tweaking it as you ask a follow-up prompt to ChatGPT to tweak the answer. So it's that sort of relationship. I may be completely wrong, but that's how I'm, from experimentation again, that seems to be where we're going with all of this.
No, thank you. That is insightful. I'm just wonder if to a point after we've created or using autonomous agents or generative AI to create stuff, then along the way we have to go back to start from scratch, which kind of leads to inefficiency, right? So I'm just wondering if
yeah, I mean, there's 2 points there. I think one is it's going to be doing this stuff, say it's building a feature, it's going to be doing that in 10 minutes rather than 3 weeks as we'd have with a team. The second thing is it doesn't need to start from scratch, remember. So let's say, for example, really a more simple example. But so I asked ChatGPT, okay, give me a Blue Ocean strategy canvas for the, sales, email, marketing market. And it will give me that. And I could say, okay, add a column for this, or take away this other one, or like, actually, could you, add these three other competitors we haven't thought about? So it's able to adjust, as like a human, right? Edit its work in some way. So as long as you don't go, hey, build this thing, go and launch it, and reach out to 1,000 customers, and you don't check that before it goes out, then it just requires a bit of oversight, I think, and prompting.
Thank you. That was helpful.
We
No
are
worries.
going, over time, but I'm happy to continue. Henry, do you have time as well?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've got another 10 minutes.
Seems like it's an interesting discussion. So we'll wrap it up in 10 minutes. Great question, Kelly. I just wanted to add one thing. Like right now, I'm working on a product. It's Starry Third Eye Anomaly Detection Platform, which detects outliers in business metrics. It uses applied science, not exactly applied AI. But to your question, like you are halfway through, if you have a strong bias of data, obviously the anomaly detection gets impacted because it is very much data driven. And some of the things that I learned as part of this whole building the product and taking to the market, that it's very important for you to be continuously playing around and dog fooding your own product and try with different, like Kaggle has a set of data sets, and learn the bias early on. And if you are aiming for certain industry or use cases, I think that is super useful, and I do that very often. And we try to baseline always, like taking these industry use cases and collecting these data sets. And I would not recommend going with synthetic data as well, because synthetic data is nicely distributed and you get all pretty result. But eliminating bias actually is helping a lot in trying out these different things, and we're continuing to do that. And that was one learning. Second is applying business context and how you can make it really configurable at the beginning, like because all of these problems like bias, how it is introduced, you will think bias, but it's primarily what problems you're trying to solve for, what business use case you're going after. It may be bias for one business use case versus the other one, or the problem you're trying to solve. So these are some of the learnings you can incorporate as you're thinking through this.
Yeah, and I should touch upon two. I mean, there's 5 principles that we teach, and that touches upon 2 of them. So I'll mention actually all 5 because we have gone through them actually by now. So the first is you writing really clear objectives. So that means providing context, giving depth of answer. Second, mastering follow-up prompts. So, digging in to really understand and get to a good answer. Third, I've mentioned AI is an assistant, not autonomous. And 4, just touching upon Kelly, Maddie, what you mentioned, beware AI hallucinations and data quality. Like if you're adding, I'm not going to go into ML because it's not my area, but if you're adding crappy, incomplete data, you're not going to get very useful insights as using AI or not, essentially. So do be careful about the input, because that will obviously affect the output. And then the final one, which we just touched upon, is continuous learning is now the baseline. So, it really is one of these things where the more I'm diving into it, there are, again, we've got this decision tree. There are certain things you want to ask if you want to, have good foundations in terms of like your roadmap, your strategy, kind of features you might want to build. But, this is all changing so quickly. So, continuous learning, testing out the tools. Bard has just been released. It's not as good as ChatGPT, but it is faster, and it's going to probably catch up quite quickly. So, try all these different tools. There's going to be all these different autonomous agents coming out as well to test out, and just see, does it make sense to you? For example, whatever the output is, and asking prompts to try and get to a better answer in some way.
Yep. Thanks, Henry, for sharing this. I think this clearly gives an indication, like what are some of the challenges PMs are facing in this space, and how to prepare for the impact of AI. And this is a very good discussion, and thanks for sharing all the tips. I think it'll be super useful for the listeners. Since we were talking about this topic, last one question, and then we will probably wrap up. So the question is around, we talked about bias, which is obviously all the points that you shared will be super useful to eliminate bias. What are some of the ethical consideration also PMs need to be aware of while using AI? Because I think that's also a very big part.
What do you mean in terms of like?
It's more
I mean, there's
around
quite a few, right? You know, there's obviously like the data question of, currently, for example, most companies are not going to allow you to upload their customer data because OpenAI will have full access to that. I think that's going to change quite quickly because it just makes a huge amount of business sense for them to anonymize the data in some way. Beyond that, I think
what I meant by ethical AI, ethical angle of AI is more around the responsible AI, where it's somewhat, yes, it is going towards bias, but it's more than bias. Like, I mean, eventually, like humans are training the AI models, right? And how inclusive they are with diverse background, like some of the responsible AI factor comes like how ethical you are. Like you should not do crime or give crime
for sure
ideas.
Yeah. I think the big one, like obviously there are these problem with a lot of these things is there's a lot of unintended or unforeseen consequences. As with that, for example, a good example of that, and that's very important for product generally, right? So say, for example, during COVID, we sort of collectively agreed that we should give lots of money out. We didn't realize unintended consequence that would trigger high inflation, for example. So, there are some obvious ones like, don't commit crime. I think it's going to be things that we don't really see in these sort of unintended knock-on effects. So, we should, try and think about what is going to happen, but sometimes we don't know what kind of unforeseen consequences might come about. And I think the concrete thing you can focus on, I think the reality is going to be this is going to automate a lot of jobs. I don't think it's going to be like mass unemployment, but it will take away the need for like that extra designer, that business analyst, front-end developer, for example. So, our responsibility that I see is to make sure that you are, if you're in an organization as a leader, that you are doing your best to help people get up to speed with this trend. So if that is, you've got a front end or UI, let's say UI designer, they should not be spending the same amount of time. They should take 20% of the time to get the job done. So, how do you help them? Help them understand product, for example, or help them reconfigure what their role looks like in your organization. I think that's, I think when it comes to impact, we always like to think big and sort of change the world. And actually, the older I've got, the more it starts with, people around you, your network, people you manage, friends, family, that kind of thing. So I think it's, trying to, keep people in a job, but also thriving with this trend.
Yep, absolutely. Since we are like way out of time, my final question to you, and we can wrap up. And thank you very much for spending time with us and answering some of the great questions, and then also providing a lot of insights which we can take with us, and great learning. So overall, like, what are your final thoughts in terms of what actions specifically PMs need to start focusing on to stay relevant and competitive in this generative AI world?
Sure. Yeah, first thing, on the event today, I'm just going to post 2 links to 2 articles where I go into sort of more depth. And there are links to sort of various tools you can use on impact of AI on product management, but also autonomous agents, which again, I'm really excited about. I'm also going to link to our bootcamp. We are launching that 5th of June. So that's where, 4-week program, really getting you to deep dive into this and apply it to real world product scenarios. But the general one is experiment. There's no reason to not be building a side project, to be, have ChatGPT up as your default browser now, asking it questions about the work you're doing every single day and just sort of discovering new use cases. So experiment, build something on the side, keep asking questions as new tools pop up. Click that link, have the tab open. Next time you need to generate an image for a presentation, go use that new tool and just start really broadening the amount of tools that are going to be in your tool set. I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah, greatly said. Like learning by doing, it's very important.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is 100% one of these things. Learn by doing. There's no way around it.
Exactly. And if folks need to contact you, they will reach out on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, reach out on LinkedIn. Just message me. I post every day as well about products and more about AI recently, and I will continue on that. So just follow me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Great session. And thanks for answering all the questions and all the insights. What I will be doing after this event, I will be also doing a newsletter post of this discussion we have, so folks can look at it offline. And if you can also send your links that you were just mentioning to me, I can include that so that it will be handy for the folks who could not attend or who have attended and wanted to refer it back later.
Sure. I've just posted them on the there's a comment you added on the event itself, but I'll send them to you directly as well.
Awesome. Cool. With that, we can wrap up. Thank you, everyone, and thanks a lot for being a nice audience and making it super interactive. We will wrap it up. If you have follow-up question, we have the events page. Comment on that. I'm sure Henry would be able to respond to that, or you can directly DM him and ask questions. So thanks again, everyone, and thank you, Henry. A huge thank you for you being present today.
Thanks for organizing.
Yes. Thank you. With that, we are wrapping up.
Thanks, Maddie. Thanks everyone for the questions as well. Cheers, Kelly. Good question.
Thank you.